Power. We have Andrea here with us and Kelly. So honored and privileged to have such wonderful people and people who really care and really think about thinking about others. So today's program, kind of a continuation from earlier programs, is about give to get. And LinkedIn is definitely a reciprocal relationship, collaborative oriented platform. So in order to build trust and attractiveness based on what you're thinking, giving is primary. So with that said, chat's open. Chat is so important. It really guides the program and really focuses our attention on what's most relevant to you. So if anybody wants to get rolling, this is a good time. And Mike jumped right in. There's nothing like encouragement. Thanks again for doing these. It's people showing up and caring about each other that makes it all worthwhile. So with that said, Andrea, it's been a little bit, about a week. So what's new and exciting, and what do you have to share to our wonderful audience?
Well, I've been to my checkup this morning, so that was now after 6 weeks. Yeah, and I have to come back, unfortunately, in May because they and don't worry about this. I'm just saying it, right? And it's not that it's the world goes under or something. They found a little spot in my lung, and they want to have a better look. So I'm going to through a scan. And you see me smiling because I believe it's just it's a minor thing because what I've been through, it was like a major asthma attack, and that leaves scar tissue in your lung, and I think it's something like that because it's really small and I don't expect anything bad.
Okay,
Yeah,
well that's a
it's a
positive
trust within, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, man.
Yeah.
And I, what you just have such a lovely perspective on everything, Andrea, honestly. And my give with, I believe in giving with no agenda of getting anything. And I will give you prayers. And I love your perspective. And I think, you're blessed. You were able to go to the doctor and find something and get further
Yeah.
tests. So I view it as a blessing as well. And I think everybody here will say extra prayers for you. And
Yes, it will be fine. I have a good feeling about this.
good.
Yeah, it's just I'm going out there and I live and enjoy my life, and I'm not worried about it. It's not that I'm going to have sleepless nights about this. Not at all.
Oh, bless you. I mean, honestly, so many people, get knocked down by much smaller things and
Hmm.
stop living. I think you're just this level of, living and understanding like, why am I going to spend my time being
Yeah.
down in a corner feeling sorry for myself when I could be up and smiling back at the world and giving? I mean, what a gift you are. I mean, truly. And I'm blessed that I get to even spend time with you here on a screen. But you're a light to so many for so many reasons.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's I don't know. I can't explain it. It's a deep feeling of trust and knowing.
Thank
I, I can't explain it any otherwise. And this is also what I want to spread. I want to spread this and inspire others, and
you.
yeah, and just make sure that they live their lives, because life is short, right?
Amen.
We don't know what's tomorrow. If
Right.
so,
We're not guaranteed it.
celebrate
Sure.
the
Yeah.
days.
Yes, many of us, and I can certainly speak from my own personal experience. I had someone I expected to come home and they didn't, just one day. And that
Yeah,
changes your perspective on life because it is
yeah,
over so fast. And then it's like, wow, I mean, that'll rattle you and make you appreciate things so much more different.
yeah,
And thankfully, it can go either way, though. And this is where I think choice comes in because we have a choice. If I would have gone down a dark path at that time, people would have said, totally understandable.
oh
But
yeah,
I chose
oh
not
yeah.
because I
Oh
wanted.
yeah, this narcissist, of course. He broke you. Oh, you poor little thing. No, he didn't break me. He made me thrive.
Yes. That's another
Yeah,
situation I did have too. But
yeah,
yeah, but that too, and it's a choice. Like I chose to
yeah,
be a survivor and thriver, not a victim of anything. And I
exactly,
love that
exactly.
about your overall perspective, and it does give so many others, I think, strength and support to know, like, hey, if I can get through it, like Don always says, it's not about the tragedy, it's about the triumph, because there's
Yeah,
that
yeah,
to it.
yeah. It
Well,
truly is.
I really, appreciate the sharing that goes on here, and really having a group that's interested in hearing about how people are doing, and just the prayer thoughts that have been generated from that. And that's really kind of why we're here, is to be that support, that sounding board. And to your point, Andrea, being able to empower people with the
Mm,
way you see things and the way you respond to things, because that's the only power you have. Things are going to happen, and a lot of them
yeah.
are choice. But it's really how you see it, because your body listens to
Breaking
what's.
up a bit, Don. I
Oh,
don't know.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Anyways, thank you so much, Andrea, for sharing. So, Kelly, what's been going on in your um, circle?
Since Sunday, I think it's been, I've only not been here yesterday, but I was here. I just was in the Um, same. I love it's so interesting. I say about giving to get, you give for with no agenda, and I
Mm,
see that crosses in business also. And I'm saying that because this is a business platform. I feel it's the same way. You give something to someone, whether it's your services, hey, I help, um, I help people do X, Y, Z. You do because you want to, because it feels good. People can tell that. They know when you do things
yes.
because you care about doing them, not because you're trying. Again, I say this, I think a lot too, not just trying to get a transaction. And giving, and when you give, and this to me, my best example that I can give for me personally is, mentoring a youth. What I get in return is priceless. I mean, there's no price tag I can put on it, it's never anything of any material value. I find that, when we ask what's the greatest gift you've ever received, it usually is about a feeling of something that they've received. It has nothing to do with an actual physical materialistic gift. And the greatest gift, that I receive is love from another, or just seeing joy in another who maybe doesn't have it that often, and just showing them a little bit of the light and giving them, and I think I told this story within the last week or so with my mentee, hasn't had a lot of adult relationships that are healthy, and was feeling very down on adults, and said, you give me hope that there is something better for me, and that there are good people out there. And those are the things, to me, I'm like, what you get in return just from that is, it's priceless. Those are the things I'll remember. I'm not going to remember, the funky T-shirt I got from someone. I'm going to remember those moments. So what are your thoughts, Andrea?
Yeah, I really think it is like that. When you have had really bad BS, that you were really in a dark spot, and you come out of it, and by loving yourself, then you have this. You have the trust, you have the confidence to give, no matter what it is you give, because you know that there is always enough for you left. And
Mm-hmm.
this is doesn't matter if it's in personal life or in business. It's 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 coming out of you, because it's your bucket is overflowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you understand what I mean. It's
Yeah.
overflowing, it's always there, it's on the tip of your tongue before. And then it's not people pleasing anymore. That's the good point.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, because you don't expect anything back. You just give, and you don't wait for that person around the corner coming back saying, "Oh, you've done such a good job, Andrea. So glad because you don't really care about people's opinions anymore. You know who you are. You have finally found your values, and when you give, and that's it. That's there's no turning point." And someone said a while ago that we are a group of elite people, and I said, no, it's a choice. I don't feel any better than you do because I love myself. It's your choice to actually have a look at yourself and start loving yourself instead of denying yourself the love you so happily give others. Huh?
Yes. And yeah, I think you just make a great point there too, is that, give to get, to go back to the theme, you have to give to yourself too.
Yes.
You've got to give yourself the love to get it from the outside. And
Yes.
I find it interesting because and I've been this person before too. When people say, "Oh, I don't give of myself because I don't want to get hurt." It's like, oh, but you are hurting yourself by not
Yes.
receiving. You're keeping yourself closed off, and you really are hurting yourself. And it's such a hard thing for people to see. But when that light bulb goes off, it is just kind of like, oh, that was not as difficult as I thought. So Don, we've kind of hijacked your show.
No, I've been enjoying everything you're saying, and you're doing a better job than I could have done. So, I appreciate it. What I'd like to really, the perspective is you should move beyond transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And transactional is I give you something, you give me something that's of equal or same value at the same time, right? Because no one wants to put it out and not feel like they might get it back. Nobody likes to give more and get less, but that's at a transactional level. The key to giving to getting is keeping the cycle going, where the giving keeps going, the getting keeps going, and now you're working in a relationship of trust where it doesn't matter who goes first, how much they bring. It's a matter of building goodwill and a memory of that. So when there is an opportunity for someone to provide something in return, you've already earned it, and that person is looking for the opportunity to share it. And I think once you can build that with conversation, explaining, here's how I'm operating today. This is what I'm looking for. And that should be the Zoom call. Not what'd you do before you did this, and not where do you live, and because that's all surface superficial. It's like, are you able and interested in getting into something that's richer and deeper than what most people do on LinkedIn? And that's the qualifier. And if it's like, no, I'm just looking to get more connections or I'm looking to sell more stuff, then it's not a good match. And I think that's the key to giving and getting is initially, who do you let into your world? What's the expectation from you to them and from them to you, and have it clearly defined. We talked about clarity the other day. When you can get visibility, clarity, and you get what you want, and hopefully you give what people need. So when you put it all together, everybody says, yes, I respect your opinion and I like where you're going. Now it's their turn to say, here's what I'm looking for. Right? And then you can put it on the table and mix it up and talk about it. But at least you have a foundation for a really strong future relationship with really cool people. Right? Because they want to know you're thinking before, during, and after about their benefit. Right? And what you can help them with, if they can help you help them. Right?
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts, Andrea?
Well, as a matter of fact, if you start helping others, you're always helping yourself.
Right.
Yes, because it's because you help others, you manifest it you keep manifesting it for yourself. It's the same like getting up in the morning and saying to yourself, I am enough. I am good as I am. This is how you start. And then you teach others. And by teaching others how they can learn to love themselves, you keep manifesting it for yourself. It's a circle, and it's not a vicious circle. It's a nice circle. It's the circle of love. Yes,
Yes, and it's so
that's
interesting that the phrase that you say, I'm not enough. That's something we all have, that we've
yeah,
learned over life. We weren't born with it, but it's just life. Some things happen, and it gives that belief, what we, the unconscious story that we tell ourselves.
yeah.
Just how loud is that voice over time? And it's interesting because when I did go through a retreat, and this was with mentee and mentors, it was a 3-day retreat. One of the exercises was going through like a meditation, and you remember, and it was 3 sets of meditation that went through a series of difficult times in your life. And it could
Oh,
be
yeah.
losing a job, or the death of someone, marriage, what have you. And for kids, of course, a lot of different things. And you wrote down things of how it made you feel afterwards when you were in that moment. How did you feel, and what were your takeaways? When people went around and talked about what those had in common, and how it made them feel, or what they were telling themselves after that situation, it was fascinating because everyone had the words in some way, shape, or form, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And it's those moments that I peel back and I go, this is where we're all the same. We all need the same thing. We all need to feel supported, to feel safe, so we can do more. And it's based on love of how we all feel. And that's just community. And that's what this is. And I think people have stripped down. You're not seeing people, I'm not seeing someone in person to make any, and I don't judge people. But it does happen. You get prejudged just because you see. I think everyone here sees people, they're seeing comments, and they're seeing just genuine authenticity. And we do talk about that quite often. But I do think that's fascinating. That's one of those things. And, I still struggle with, I'm not good. I have a ring that says I'm enough. Because when I start to feel insecure and I recognize that, I'm like, oh gosh, what just tipped me off to not feel good enough? Because that is my, part of my unconscious story that I, spent my career, quite frankly, trying to prove wrong. That's, where I went up the corporate ladder, and I was so focused, and man, I was going to get there come hell or high water where I wanted to go.
I was so hurt in corporate.
And ultimately it was just to prove my unconscious story wrong. Like, yes, I am enough. See, I achieved this. And then I got there and I was like, this isn't really as great as I thought it was going to be. Because that's what I wasn't trying to solve. I needed to solve the whole issue of, why am I feeding the part of me not being good enough? And that came into the whole self-love. And I mean, that's a process. It's not like I just did it overnight. I wish that was the case.
No, it's a process, and it's an ongoing process. That's what I mean by saying, when you help others, you keep helping yourself. You manifest it. Yes, the love for yourself, because you get. It's like it's well, in my methods of helping people, that I am not good enough or I am not wanted, we call that a sting, like a thorn like a thorn of a rose. That sting you thrust into your heart by creating the thought, I am not good enough. So you know how it feels when you have a thorn in your finger. Yes, how it's irritating, how it's how the blood is pumping, and how painful that is. So that sting is sitting in your heart,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got to come out. And the only way for it to come out is understanding that the moment that you created this thought of, I'm not good enough, there was a conflict behind it, a conflict with a person in your family. because it always starts in childhood, right? So when you then look at this conflict and you see that person never said to you, I'm not good enough,
Mhm,
all of a sudden you start feeling free.
mhm.
You remove the sting, you remove the thorn. And of course, there's more with it, which I don't will not explain here, because for that you have to come into my therapy.
Yes,
Yeah,
we all wish it was that.
that's how it works. But yeah, this is how if you can if you get this metaphor of the sting or the thorn in your finger, how that feels in your, it's no wonder that people when they have this in their heart, that they become so um that they cannot love others, that they become sometimes even vicious and hateful, because they are in this pain themselves so deeply.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
whilst it's like,
Uh,
bing, get it out, and it's done and dusted. Yeah. And
yeah.
then you also, every time when you have a situation and you go like, oh, here is a moment of, I'm not feeling good enough. You
Mhm.
realize those moments then, and then you can switch it around and saying, oh yeah, that's not true, I am good enough.
Taking
Huh?
that in. And it's
Yeah,
interesting because, you just touch on, and I know we've said this in the past too, because this does come up in the work environment. There's people that aren't very kind in the office, or on
yeah,
wherever you take work, or a client, what have you. And when I switched my mind shift to understand, this person who is acting like a complete jerk all the time, and
yeah,
going at people, it's not about, I'm like, it's not about me, it's about them. And they're the ones that are in pain and they're projecting it. Now, I'm not saying
yeah,
it rationalizes their behavior where it's acceptable, because I still don't think it's acceptable, especially in a work environment.
mhm,
And I won't tolerate that in my life, because that's just, I have boundaries of what I will tolerate and what I will not tolerate. But I think for me anyways, when I change my mindset of understanding this person is coming from a place of pain that has nothing to do with me. They're just projecting it because it's all inside of them. And
yeah.
one summer I was in Carlsbad, California, one of my very favorite places,
Good.
to go with my family. And I was sitting on the beach listening to
Oh.
The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And I'm telling you,
Oops,
there was
I was
nothing more
gone.
peaceful than sitting in the ocean with the breeze and listening to Eckhart Tolle's voice about the power of now. And he referred to people who project like that. It's because their pain centers are activated, or the thorn, like you're saying, Andrea, very similarly. Um, and just that little thing that he said completely changed of how I looked at people. Because then I was like, well, I'm going to
Mm,
observe this now with curiosity of when people, are acting away. And it's just, I'm fascinated by how people behave. And so I have empathy, but again, I still have boundaries. I won't tolerate someone to treat me that way. Like I have no problem saying, hey, let's take a minute here. I know that you're
yeah,
projecting something's going on with you, but you don't need to be putting that on me. We need to talk and have a conversation. Let's do that. Um, and that'll usually rattle someone back into their place and be like, oh, some don't like that, but some are be like, oh, thank you for letting me know, or kind of, helping me reset also. Cause it's like, hey, you're feeling emotional right now. Maybe we need to take a little breather and then come back later. Which is also another way to get, because you're getting peace, which is what we all want to have.
yeah. That I was gonna say this, because you're talking about boundaries. Those boundaries, you don't set them for others; you set them for yourself, and
Mhm.
those boundaries are helping you to give and help others, because you know your values and you know how far you can go. Because that's all people who have been in a toxic relationship had to come to the conclusion that they were giving and expecting something back, isn't
That's right.
it?
And then it doesn't. It doesn't come back. And it's such a fascinating experience to go through in that sense, and looking back at it later and going, wow.
Mm,
Because I take responsibility. I participated in that conflict. I mean, I
yeah, Oh, yeah.
And so, but to realize that after a while, like I kept giving, expecting, a different result. But in that kind of relationship, what happens is you get those little love bombs here and there, and that's what you hold on to the entire time, is knowing like I've seen the goodness, like I know it's there, and I know I can get it because I've had it before. But that's the same thing even in a business relationship, because they can also be toxic, is to know it doesn't matter what you do, you can't change that person or their behavior. They've got to want to change it, recognize it, have some introspection to know, like, I even need to do something to change. And that's kind of like telling an alcoholic they've got to go to AA, and they're like, heck no, I want to go to the bar, but I'll come with you later. It's not going to work. They've got to want to do it and have the understanding of like, hey, I need to make a change because something is not sitting right inside of me.
Yeah, well, it's never the other.
I think what we're really focused on is communication and messaging, and having a true voice that aligns with your spirit, and also the ability to verbalize it comfortably with someone. If you aren't allowed to talk or allowed to say certain things the way you want them said, then that's a pre-qualifier. You know, too many people are finding reasons to stay instead of reasons to leave.
That's right.
You know, and putting the responsibility on the other person to make a reciprocal relationship healthy.
Yeah.
Everybody starts as themselves, right? Everybody was independent before they met. By meeting and joining forces, it should add more value to all involved. It shouldn't be now you're going to pay a heavier price and I'm going to get a better dividend. And once that happens, it's that first decision not to do something you know is right. Right? And then once you start going down that slippery slope, it's like, well, it's not that much to ask. It's not fair, but I can do it and it'll be okay. And pretty soon you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
And your true voice starts getting corrupted.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And now you're nothing to anybody. Right? The person thinks you're weak and will put up with anything. You start believing you're weak and you will put up with anything. And, why accommodate the uncomfortable with a person who doesn't deserve it? That's the other thing.
Yeah. And I think even in that situation, being on the other side of it, as in whatever communicative relationship that you're in that's like that, it's usually not that like everything happens at one time. Because then that would be jarring. You'd be like, oh, heck no, I'm not getting into this relationship. It's little by little that you can rationalize, oh, well, it was just this little thing. It's not that big of a deal. And then it continues to happen. And then all of a sudden you're like, all of this is a big deal because this all makes no sense. And you're right. Having that confusion of your own thoughts and I struggled with that because he would say things to me and I would be like, I know that's not true about me. Like, I know that's not true. But you have a hard time reconciling because it's like, this person is supposed to love me and is saying the most heinous things to me. How do you reconcile that? I mean, that was such a, and I think ultimately at the end of all of that, it is about, taking ownership for your participation in it. Cause like I said, I participated, but it's also forgiving yourself.
Oh, yes.
What I did the best I could with what I had at the time. And here I am. And it's okay. But I think that part of the transition for me was probably the most difficult and probably the one that I didn't see, that it took me longer to forgive myself, but I didn't realize I needed to at the time when you're really in it. But after that, and forgiving someone who's never going to admit they did anything wrong, that's also a little bit of a challenge. But it's so freeing and it's so amazing. And definitely a pivotal point for me of how I healed beyond that. What are your thoughts, Andrea? Because I'm sure you've got some on that.
Well, I think the forgiving part can only start, forgiving yourself and forgiving him, can only start when you understand your role in it, and when you understand how it made you grow. Yes, when you start smiling instead of saying, "Thank you thank you that I could meet you in my life. Thank you for this opportunity to learn."
Yeah.
Because I had this amazing coach, Peter Sage, and he was saying you need to look at it in a different way, and you need to feel gratitude for it. You need to feel thankful for the opportunity, and the best way is write it down for yourself if you cannot feel it otherwise. And it's he just said, thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn from this experience. And all of a sudden it clicks, right?
Yes.
It does click. You need, when you see those words and you go, damn, this is it. Yeah. This is it. Yeah.
Well, I think too is when you're going through that, now you can recognize there's a lot of lessons I can help other people with.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So while you're learning, you're also becoming the future teacher of what you're learning. And you'll say, not only to Andrea's point, have you taught me something that I probably would have never known without you.
Right.
Now I can help teach other people who don't ever have
Mhm.
That's
right?
Yeah.
To
Or
get
just other people, not even just teaching. I mean, which of course that's fantastic, but letting people know they're not alone. I know for me that's initially what I really struggled with, because I didn't know what emotional abuse was. I honestly believe something was wrong with me. I mean, I believed something.
We all do. We all do.
Like,
All the victims do.
I've never known anybody that had this issue, you know, and it was just it was an odd place to be, because there's such shame that comes into it,
Mm.
embarrassment. How do I talk about this? Because it seems silly. But then, of course, when you start peeling back, I ended up finding out how many other people had gone through a similar situation. And I was like, why does nobody talk about it? Like, that's
Isn't that amazing?
me.
How many, as soon as you start talking about it, they come out of there. They come from everywhere, and you go, wow, why is it that you don't want to talk about it? It's the same with, well, I'd say the same with everything. I mean, every sort of abuse.
Yes.
They don't come out, and they don't tell you until they know they can trust you because you have been there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
There's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, it just
No.
happens. And it's funny because I've spoken at some women's events about domestic violence, because it has a different face. It's not the same for everyone. And I've had women come up to me afterwards and they'll be like, I can't believe that you went through that and that you put up with that. And I said, well, I'm not the same person I was then, though. So you're
No.
right. I wouldn't put up with it. So you're
Yeah.
for today, but I'm a different person now because I went through it. And I
Yeah.
100% agree with you. I think, you know, having the mindset of even whatever tragedy comes along in your life or thing that you consider to be a tragedy is changing it as, you know, I have no idea why I'm learning this lesson, but God, I trust the fact that it's supposed to teach me something, and find gratitude in it. And you know, it doesn't always seem easy when you're going through the difficult time, you know, losing a loved one as an example. When you're in it, it's like, I don't see what the positive lesson is here necessarily.
Yeah.
Through it later, you do. I mean, my most recent loss in my life was a dear friend of mine, and he was in the hospital for 2 weeks before he passed. And I looked at that 2 weeks. Now, granted, I was heartbroken, but I looked at those 2 weeks as such a gift that I got to spend with him. As you know, he found peace with what was going to be happening, and he was fine with it. And just to be there and be present in the transition that he went through during that time was so special. And I'm like, you know, thank you for allowing me to be there and be with him during that time. That is a gift, as opposed to, you know, gosh, 15, 20 years ago, I've been devastated and rocked off my rocker for weeks because I didn't have part, on the, like, this is a terrible thing that just happened, and it is, but it's just, again, about mindset and what
Iemand fietst de pech als ze sneden rijgen. Oh, ik denk het wel eens.
Not me.
Somebody was trying to mingle with our conversation here, and I stopped her by going back down my phone.
Technology. But I think that one can, no matter what situation you're in, this is all about relationships. It could be a personal relationship. It could be a professional relationship where you work. People are manipulating people. People are minimizing people. People are victimizing people. And it's really about, again, what we talked about today, boundaries, speaking up for yourself when you have to, and taking the right action when you know it to be true, even though in the short term, it's going to be painful. Right? Walk away from a job and not have another one and have obligations. Do it because it's the right thing. In time, it is the right thing. But that's, I think, everything to what we're talking about is time. Time heals everything. The question is, how long does it take? How long do you allow it to take? How long do you say goodbye to something? And when it's gone, it's already said goodbye to you. People want to make things right that are wrong and should never be right. But it's almost like tidying up instead of just saying, hey, this is not worth the time, effort, or thought. Plus, the other thing is if someone's taking advantage of you and making you feel less and them making them feel more, you're doing them a favor by why would you hang out with somebody like me if you think that little of me, right? If I'm so less, why not get something, right? I mean, if you're complaining, and I'm accepting, it's wrong on both sides.
Oh, right?
Yes.
I deserve that behavior. Like that's the part, to look back on, to be like, God, I actually accepted that. But you also get into a mindset of, because I knew what was being said to me at a certain point. I'm like, I know this is projection of what's going on inside of you, and it's not me. But trying to reconcile it was just so difficult. And then, on top of it, it was just the whole thing of how do I make this right with myself, and the fact of I'm in this relationship with this person, and I know that it doesn't make any sense, but I know it's not right. I always had that feeling, and it was threw at me physically. Like physically, I had some issues, and I 100%, it was my body screaming at me like, girl, you're not paying any attention to your intuition, because I knew it was wrong. But you don't know how to reconcile it, but you also make excuses for it, for yourself to reconcile it. So you make excuses, but you also don't want to poke the bear. So it's like you go along with things. And I mean, I used to be fascinated, and I journaled an awful lot during the end of that time for my own sanity, because I'm like, the gaslighting was ridiculous. So I started journaling so I could refer to it later, just for my own sake, not to prove anyone else wrong. I needed to prove myself that all my instincts were correct. But it was also at the end of any kind of argument, because I didn't participate in it, because after a while you're like, there's no point in participating. It's just exhausting. And you're going to end up apologizing anyways. And I was like, how is it that I was upset over something that happened, and I'm the one at the end apologizing for this? Like, how? What in the wide world is happening?
I think that most people take a direct approach, which isn't always the best approach, which is trying to fix somebody, trying to change what can't be changed, and by blaming that person. Because once you accuse that person, now you're going to get all the denial, all the rejection, all the justification. But if you just approach like, here's how I feel, and no one is going to tell me how I feel, right? You can tell me about whatever you want, but I'm telling you how I feel and what I can do and what I can't do with this. And at that point, you put it out there to say, if you are willing to walk away with nothing, and they know that, right? That changes something. And if they don't know that, you walk away. I mean, you're not hoping for someone to change your mind. You're just hoping for someone to listen to your mind, right? And tell them what you need. And if you think it's weak, if you think it's not justified, that's your opinion, right? But that's not what I'm going to be working with. Is I'm going to be working with feelings, not your opinion. And you know, bullies are only bullies because they typically never have to fight, right? They just have to threaten. They just have to intimidate. And they have all day long to figure out how they're going to play people, right? And a good, honest person is at a severe disadvantage from someone who works that all the time. And at that point, you say, I'm way over my head here. You know, way too much. It's way too complicated. It's difficult. And at the end of the day, to everybody's point earlier, life is a blessing and too precious and scarce to just throw it away. Like take my day and ruin it right at the beginning and make me feel bad until I go to bed so you can do it again tomorrow. You know, and after a while, you can say even nothing is better than this.
Yes.
Right? Just being alone.
Well, that's so true.
Yeah, I mean,
because I found myself with nothing, and that was a lot nicer than with everything else I had before.
Yeah.
Well, because you know what happens? You get all of you back from that person.
That's right.
The person that took a bit of your soul here and
Yeah.
took a slice of that here, all of a sudden it gets returned to you, and now you've got a better way of dealing with it. But not only that, you get rid of the antagonism, the conflict, the hatred, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And now you can breathe clean air again. And now the world's your oyster. It's like you can do anything you want with anybody. And when you have nothing, you have nothing to lose. You know, the good thing about being at the bottom, you can only go up. You know? So what's your thoughts, Andrea?
Well, I was gonna say, if there's anybody out there listening to us, yes, and not coming forward and saying, look, I am in this BS situation, I just want to say, whatever you do, don't stay, but plan it. Plan it to leave. Don't just run. Yes. And there's another thing. I wrote an ebook when I'd done my healing. I wrote an ebook, and in there I said I allowed somebody to switch my light off. And this is exactly what happens to you. You allow somebody to switch your light off. You become a gray mouse. Yeah?
Yes. I said what my thing was like, I let someone dull my shine. They didn't just dull it, they shut it off. But I allowed them to do it. I gave them the power to do it. And then hence even my glass. Well, hence my bling stuff. But let your light shine.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. No, I have my smile. I shine all the time.
It is like such a gift of, and I know I've said this on another show, is one of my moments of leaving that situation. And you're right. I mean, my situation was not the best. It was bad, and I did have to have an exit strategy. And I was sitting in an apartment, and I had a mattress on the floor, and that was it. And I was like, I finally felt myself though again, and had that reconnection that I needed. I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel because it was still very dark, but I finally remembered that it was there. And I was like, I will, that's where I proclaimed, you know, I will become better and not bitter. And I promised myself that is, you know, I will not live in this space any longer. And it's over.
Yes.
I am going
I know. I found myself in the deepest lockdown. In a new city. I had lost my apartment, which was 3 minutes away from the beach. My heart was bleeding. I was in this town. I didn't know the town, in the middle of the town, in the center of town, whilst I was in the village before. And I was totally alone. No family member, nobody. It was my first. I had two people. No, my son helping me first, and then New Year's Eve, I was completely alone. I unpacked Then I put my nicest dress on.
Love it.
I made myself a meal. Then I went to bed because I was tired and I didn't notice when the new year came. I was fast asleep. But I learned so much to be with myself and then let it come, let the feelings come. And this is what I wanted to say. If anybody's out there, I wrote this ebook. Just send me a DM and I send it to you. And it might be an eye opener to change things within yourself. Yes, because yeah, I think nobody nobody should go through this. Nobody should go through this at all.
No, I
Nobody
agree.
should go through this.
Do the ebook, and I think that's a great way because a lot of time, because it is covered in shame and embarrassment,
Yeah,
that giving the ebook, I mean, nobody's going to know. I mean, I think that's beautiful, Andrea. Great share.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think that, you know, it demonstrates how a group like this can be so supportive as people are going through this or coming from this. You know, whatever it is, their relationship at home, their relationship at work, their relationship with themselves. You know, you're always adding, subtracting relationships, you know, and really, once you know the difference, it's hard to go back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the first time for anything is the only time for that thing. You
yeah,
start to figure, hey, this is the way it is because you don't know any different. But once you left the dark and seen the light, you can't go back to the dark because now you
no,
know the difference. And some people learn early, some people learn late, some people never learn. And you know, there's people who don't survive.
Yeah.
There's people who end up in relationships that are the ruin for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saving everybody around you by leaving something that doesn't nourish you.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I think it's so important to empower yourself, and that's what this hour is about. That's what this group is about. And let me recognize some of the people who make it all happen. Lillian's here. Kim is here. Kim's a regular. Paul is offering his availability.
that's great.
Here. You know, Paul's a young 26-year-old wise person.
Oh my God.
You know, Paul here says my calendar and DMs are open as well for anyone who needs to talk, whether it's business or personal. That is as long as you don't mind a 26-year-old.
That's so beautiful.
It's
You're
beyond
only, you're
26.
only as wise as what you think and how you act, and you're only as old as how you think and how you act.
Yes. Yes.
And it's a pleasure to have the diversity of youth and age,
Yes.
people from all over the world, because people are people, right?
Mhm.
And if you can connect at a human level and a thoughtful level,
Mm-hmm.
that's so much more than anybody sometimes has in their life. I mean,
Yeah.
some people look at every door and it's locked.
Yeah.
You know, and they don't have opportunity, you know, for whatever reason. And when someone opens their door to them and shares something that they really love to hear, haven't heard enough of, and find out they are good enough, because there's a lot of good people who think they're good enough, not because a lot of bad people think they're bad enough.
Yeah.
And it's whose lens are you looking through?
That's right. And I think, Paul, I adore him. And I agree, like anyone who needs someone to talk, I think any of us here would be like, yes, DM us if you want to talk about something, because I know anybody would be happy to do so. And I also think that because we are on a business platform and we have been mentioning these kind of relationships are in the workplace, and people
Mhm.
sometimes don't know how to deal with it. Like, well, I can't leave. I don't know what to do. I actually recently had a CEO of a company reach out to me, telling me that they were looking at a specific candidate that worked at a company that I had worked at. And I wrote him back and I said, I don't know her. I didn't work with her. So I don't have any input to give you, you know.
Mm.
And in my mind, I'm like, that's kind of strange. She would make it a referral. Well, he wrote me back and he said, oh no, she didn't put you as a referral. Would you mind just jumping on a quick call with me? Sure. And what he wanted to know, because he had hired a CFO who had been in an abusive work environment, a very unhealthy, toxic work environment. And he said, it took me a year working with this guy to get him kind of re-normalized in the work. And he said, I know that this woman that you worked with, and it came from a toxic environment, and I want to know your thoughts because I don't want to have to deprogram someone again. And there was a couple of things that struck me with that. I was like, dang, first of all, I've never had anybody reach out and ask from that perspective. So I thought that was super interesting. But two, I said, well, all I can do is, assume because I don't know her. And I said, but just on paper, the fact that she was only there for a short period of time, she was only there for like 3 or 4 months. And I said, my feeling is that it took that long before you see behind the curtain. Somebody's nice for a while.
Yeah.
And I said, that seems about right. And so I said, but I have no other input. But I just found it fascinating that I was like, wow, this CEO is really caring about his culture for one, but two, being like, I need to understand what I'm getting myself into. Of course, I didn't give the info, but I just thought that was kind of interesting because I'd never had anyone ask me from, hey, this person's coming out of a toxic culture. How do you think they're going to behave in a normal, thriving, positive culture environment? And you don't think of how different that is because it is someone leaving a toxic, abusive relationship and putting him into a good environment. And they can act a little bit, skittish at first because it's like, ooh, I don't know if I'm supposed to trust this because I've been smacked down for so many years. I don't know what to do. But so interesting. Anyways, what are your thoughts, Don?
Well, I think that, the more proactive you are, the more responsible and accountable you are for what you do. And being a principal and not an agent, not having to go through somebody or get somebody's permission to do what you want to do. And people have a choice. People could work for themselves and build their own dream, or they could work for somebody else and build their dream. Some people are more confident and comfortable with security, knowing a paycheck is there. But see, those days are over. No matter who writes your check, you're working for yourself. And you better start figuring that whatever you have is going to change. And if it doesn't change, you should change it to stay in step with everything. And that saying, if it's going to be, it's up to me. Take that to heart. And if some kind person or something wonderful comes out of the blue, that's gravy. Appreciate it. Thank it. But, the giving and getting, it's constant. It never ends. Every word you say is a give, and every word you hear is a get, right? And how are your gives getting more gets for you in a good way? And, the other thing is what's important to somebody typically isn't very important to someone else. So when you give somebody something that means nothing to you and it means everything to them, what a trade that is. If somebody looked at the stuff you're going to toss away and said, oh, I love this, you'd be saying, take it, right? Because it's going in the garbage or no one's going to eat it, And I think when people realize they create their own opportunities by what they put out there, right? If you come out strong and confident and empowered, people respect that. But if people say, how you doing? Well, I'm okay. And you're wishy-washy and no big deal. There's not much to work with, right? And if the next question someone asks you comes back with a blah, 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 then it's pretty much over. And then people start to see, well, what can I take out of this, right? It's not really what I want, but hey, is there any free pickings here? And I think what everybody should realize, out of the population of the world, or just LinkedIn with 900 million people, there's enough good people. You never have to think twice about a bad person, right? If there's only 1 or 2 people left in the world and you say, well, if I want to be with people, these are it. You've got millions, and you got people on this board like Paul, like myself, like Andrea, like Kelle. Test us. If you need to talk to someone, see who will refuse you. I doubt it, right? Because everybody knows each other. Everybody also trusts each other that if someone reached out, it must be important, right? And I think at that point, you're resonating with people like yourself. And you also know, just like anything else, but for the grace of God, that could be me, right?
Yeah.
Whoever's suffering right now. I mean, it doesn't take much to lose all your money. It doesn't take much to lose all your family. It happens every day,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's where everything I've heard and read is all about gratitude.
Yes. And I think I heard this morning, and it made me think of it when you were saying that, Dawn, is sometimes people, it's not that they need to hear something profound, or you need to, like, how am I going to fix this? People just want to be listened to. Like, there's power in just being present and just listen and let someone feel safe. You don't need to fix it, because you can't undo it. Whatever the situation is, it is what it is. But I think people get so mixed up or afraid to have those kind of conversations that are uncomfortable. Like, I don't know how you're dealing with that jerk at work or that jerk in your situation. You don't need to say anything. And I believe one of the steps, because it impacts entire families when you're in those kind of, personal relationships. And it did impact my entire family. And my mom, when she was doing reading and research on it, is one of the things was, don't pass judgment on me. You don't pass judgment on the victim, which I still don't like that word, is because it makes you feel worse. You're already in that shameful place. And the last thing you need is judgment. You just need support. Just support and just listen. And it's like, that doesn't just go with any kind of, domestic violence, abusive relationship. It's just in general, regardless of what happens. And I think particularly today with people, losing their jobs and how many big layoffs are happening, and people who have never had to look for a job in their life. You just need someone to listen to them because they're going through something that they've never been through before. Or they're feeling, a way that they've never felt before, because the job market is a completely different place than it used to be just a few years ago. So I think it's so important just to remember, just listen. And the other part of that is we learn so much by listening from others. And there's just so much about, and this goes with the give to get. You're giving by listening to someone.
Yeah.
To get connection and really to get love. That's, I feel like I always come back to that, but I feel like that's how it all, kind of packages up together. What are your thoughts, Andrea?
Yeah, I actually, when you listen to someone, when you give them a chance, that you listen, that they can speak, it helps them also to get clarity in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
And when they get the clarity, sometimes it happens that they get the solution themselves, because the solution is already within them.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes, I say that all the time. I'm like, sometimes I just need, and my close friends know this about me. Hey, I've got something going on. I need to run something by you. Just saying it out loud sometimes makes me go, oh my gosh, like I need to do this, and this. Like I just, you'll hear yourself say it sometimes to go, like, why am I complicating this in my brain? Like this is just, something that I can manage myself. Which I think really is a majority of the time when we really say it out loud, and or write it down. If you don't talk to someone, or you don't know how to approach to talk to someone, so where I'll go back to journaling, or just grab a good old legal pad and write down your thoughts. Of the situation of what you're feeling. That can help you reconcile too. Journaling has been a godsend for me on so many different levels. Whether or not it's writing down personal goals, career goals, or just writing down when I'm feeling lousy and going, I'm letting this stuff go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's allowed to be there.
Yeah.
The feeling is allowed to be there. And when you accept the feeling and the thought, you can also ask yourself, is this my thought, or does it belong to someone else? Because often there's an opinion about, somebody has given an opinion about you, which you quietly accept. And you are in that old habit of accepting somebody's opinion about you without noticing. And when you sit down and think, was that really my thought or did it come from somewhere else? All of a sudden you go, oh, yeah, this was said to me like 2 days ago, but that is not me. So you come back to the real you.
Well, I think too is it's easy to identify everyday things you do without thinking about doing it, right? If you bought a piece of clothing that didn't fit, you would not have any trouble taking it back to the store and saying it was the wrong size, and you'd get a refund or an exchange, right? In life, when things don't fit, you need to give it back too and say, this just doesn't fit me. And more importantly, I think people have to understand that wherever you are, that's where you have to start from. And if you have a hard time verbalizing, that's a good way to start. I've been trying to figure out how to say this to you, and I still haven't figured it out. Maybe we could talk about it, right? I mean, when you invite people in and say, let's begin something.
Right.
Because I've decided, and here's my judgment, and here's where you fit in. That kind of leaves very little room. No different if someone was to do that to you. Like, there's nothing to talk about. It's understood. You're this, I'm that. This is how it's going to work, and then they go off on their merry way. Versus like, yeah, well, that doesn't, I never had anything to do with any of this. I accept the result, Andrea.
I used the metaphor once because we women are, with shoes, for example. I don't know if you have that, Kelly. You bought some nice shoes.
Oh, yeah.
And then you come home and then you realize, the left or the right, it doesn't really fit, but they look so beautiful. So you go and wear them. And then you have a blister. And then all you do is you keep taking care of the blister instead of getting rid of the problem. I use that metaphor when describing how it is when you are in a relationship with a narcissist. You constantly fix the blister, but not the cause of the pain.
Get rid of the shoes.
That's I got to just say, hey, you're just a shoe to me. I'm leaving. A shoe that causes me to have
exactly. You're not the best leather I deserve.
Yeah, and I think that's the key because it shows you can do that in situations that don't involve people, like clothes, or if you had a bad meal or something, you might verbalize it to someone. But if someone's with you, and the challenge is the game, like I say, is always between you and yourself, right? You set the rules, you set the boundaries, you keep the score, you decide who wins and how much they win or how much they lose. And if someone realizes they have that immense power, because they say no is the most powerful word in the vocabulary, right?
Yeah.
And not enough people say no and don't say it fast enough and don't say it emphatic enough.
It's a full sentence.
Yes.
No.
There's nothing more to be said after no.
Yes.
It's not.
I always give the advice, say it doesn't fit my schedule right now. Then you escape the no, but you have given a no.
Well, and at the same time,
it's a
you
way
can
to
just say,
start.
I've changed. So you take responsibility. I used to be able to deal with this. I used to be able to okay with this. It's terrible now. I can't, just like if you were outside, it was 115 degrees, right? You would just say, I can't tolerate this type of heat or temperature, right? I need to go where it's cooler. And it's the same thing. People get overheated. And instead of giving each other room or just separating, right? Sometimes where something's going. You've been there before. If you say a certain thing and something happens, you're into this. And you know how it ends, right?
I've seen this movie before.
It's never going to change the ending to it. So it's like, now that I know what's coming and I actually expect it, what can I do to pivot out of here? And once you say goodbye, it's final. right? It's not easy because to
Mm.
Kelly's point, there were good times. There were memories, right? When people were the right person at the right time. But it's getting fewer and far between. Another thing is, just like here, trust is so hard to build and so easy to break. And it's like, how do you unring a bell once it happens? And usually it's the betrayal that's the most hard,
Yes.
right? It's like they just did stuff and lied to me and kept lying, and I didn't even know. And that's what really is upsetting. If everybody was totally straight and honest with everybody, you would understand their position. You may not appreciate it. You may not make it your position, but you also respect them for saying, hey, this isn't working. Goodbye. And it's not easy to be the one that someone says goodbye to.
And there's some people that make it impossible for you to say goodbye to, or try to make it impossible for you to say goodbye to.
Yeah, because they give you a candy bar for the time just to, whet your appetite to move and get back to it later. So there's people who manipulate people are pretty smart about doing it.
Oh yeah,
They
the
know
level of manipulation is crazy, and I'm like, God, if you put that energy towards something good in this world, how awesome would that be? I always was fascinated, and I still am, by that mentality of like the amount of time and energy, and I don't even want to say intellect, but there is intellect in the way that some manipulation goes.
Oh yeah.
Depths of it, but it's like, man, if you could just twist that around and make it to a positive thing in this world, what a great place it would be all the way around. It's just kind of, wow. But I don't think that way, so I can't relate. But I know we're like a little past.
Yeah, you're so right. Listen, this has been an exciting, worthwhile discussion and conversation and exchange, and hopefully a takeaway here, a thought here, a saying there will be enough to ignite a flame that will get people active or action oriented, because it's taking action that really empowers you.
Yes.
Once you do something, you've got something you can say, I did, and I moved in my direction. The other thing I want to layer on is all the relationships that I see that started okay or maybe not so okay. It's because it got worse because people grew apart, right? People started learning at different places at different levels. And here's the other thing. If your goal is personal development and success and happiness, not everybody is focused on that. Not everybody's thinking every day, I want to get better, I want to change. Most of these terrible people think they're the greatest, think there's nothing wrong with them, think there's no reason to change, think you're the one who's crazy for even saying it, and at that point, you know how far apart you are when the reality can't even be seen by both people in it, where they're lying to themselves while they're lying to you, and where does truth have a place to live if it's surrounded by lies and betrayal and all that stuff, when the person could today do exactly what they should be doing, but they're more comfortable or uncomfortable. It doesn't matter. To everybody's point, when someone's terrible to you, they're feeling horrendous pain because they can't keep it in.
That's right.
And they need a target, right? And you become the disposal area for that, right? They get rid of their trouble by putting it on you, and then by you taking it, they feel even less respect for you.
Yeah,
to do
that's
things
for sure.
you should be doing, and they think less for you. And you're not fueling your tank with less. You're diminishing yourself, and also people around you know what's going on, even when you don't think. And their respect for you starts to diminish, because it's like, how long are they going to stay there? How long are they going to put up with this stuff? Why don't they just go? And it's naturally, from the outside in, it's easy to say. If knowledge was the only thing, give anybody a book and say, read this and you'll know everything you need to know to fix yourself. But without motivation, without support, and without a differential, right? If you have a choice and you say, hey, those are great people that love me. These are awful people that hate me. It doesn't take much to think, let's get over to the right side. Andrea, in closing, what's your thoughts?
I loved being with Kelly.
Oh,
I saw that Kelly was coming on with 3 of us, and I was like, oh yes, a
oh,
dream coming true.
oh,
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that, and I hope we have we have been giving a lot today. I really hope that somebody out there we could help, even if it's one person who I can help. Then I'm happy.
amen.
Well, that's great. Kelly, final thoughts?
I don't even need to say anything more than that. You are the sweetest. It was such a joy, and I feel likewise so honored to be here with you. And my final thoughts is like, hey, this community is about no competition and helping each other shine their brightest shine. Go out and shine so bright that others can't help but shine too.
Well, that's
Just like,
great. I
woo,
want to thank
sunglasses.
everybody. It's kind of funny. It was right before I was having trouble logging on, and it turned out to
Yeah.
be a terrific show. And, I'm so happy when I can say less. And Kelly and Andrea were so great as a team, interchanging ideas. It didn't need a lot of moderation. And, it's really getting more people to share their true voice with more people together. And that's why I think these 3-person shows make so much sense. Tomorrow is going to be Jenny Maxwell. On Thursday, we're going to have Kelly and Brett Packard, who's just a fabulous international banking superstar that's retired and helping a lot of people. On Friday, we're going to have a new gentleman, Gurpreet, who we call Gurp. I've had a conversation with. He's actually going to be joining Paul, who's coming on the show as a partner to Gurp.
Oh, good.
Those two. And then Saturday, I think Kelly's coming back again. And then Sunday is, I believe, Sarah. So we've got a full lineup with new people coming on. And the more we do these 3-person things, the more people can be on the show. And the easier it is for everybody on the show not to have to carry the show, when it's really more going on. We could have talked for 2 hours and never run out of stuff today. But hopefully we share a lot of great ideas, a lot of experiences. I applaud Andrea for being so open and sharing. And by doing that, allowed so many people into her life and with the ability to pray and support. And Kelly's just phenomenal, and growing with the show in every respect. So I'm so happy and grateful on so many levels to so many people. And it happens every day. And the people are getting so evolved that as everybody gets a little bit better, they're bringing more to the table and helping other people. And I think that's the key, is peer-to-peer, ratchet up together, put your helping hand down as well as up to bring people with you. And with that, thank you so much. Rest up in 23 hours. We'll be back with another great show. Thank you so much, Andrea and Kelly.
Have a good day.